van Nelly Koetsier lees ik mijn blog voor, maar ik vraag me af, misschien weten jullie alles al wat erin staat, maar ich kann es dann doch mal tun. Es ist in het Engels. Und ich würde auch gerne wissen, wer spricht eigentlich kein Holländisch? Also dann führen wir das Gespräch auch auf Englisch. Okay. Ja. I started with the title Hans Eisler, A Lifelong Struggle Against Oppression. And then the first question, because many people don't know him, who was Hans Eisler? Well, he may be a celebrity in Germany and Austria, but in the Netherlands, his music is seldom heard. Nevertheless, his work is still highly topical, and throughout his life, he fought against oppression, just as today, people in Hong Kong, this morning it was on the radio again, and Venezuela, for instance, they're continuing to fight for their freedom. His name is inextricably linked to that of Bertolt Brecht, with whom he defended the communist cause. Eisler set his wry lyrics to inflammatory music infused with jazz and popular elements. Everything to make the oppressed masses take to the barricades. He fled from the Nazis to America, where he became the victim again of communist hunter McCarthy. In Holland, Eisler has almost been forgotten. That's why this symposium was organized. But he finds strong advocates in the Hans Eisler Foundation that has initiated this ambitious festival. I'll start with something about the Levensloop, the life of Eisler, from the Viennese Conservatory to Arnold Schoenberg. Eisler was born in Leipzig in 1898 as a son of the philosopher Rudolf Eisler. When he was 3 years old, the family moved to Vienna, where a piano was rented, if there was any money. Unfortunately, this was often lacking, and Hans learned how to compose from books and scores. Already during his studies at the grammar school, he wrote his first compositions. In this period, he and his brother Gerhard joined a progressive youth club. During the First World War, as Hans already told you, Hans Eisler fought in a Hungarian regiment, suffering several injuries. On his return, he enrolled as a composition student at the Vienna Conservatoire. However, he was dissatisfied with their teaching, and in 1919, he turned to Arnold Schoenberg, who taught him for free for 4 years. During this period, Schoenberg developed his 12-tone music, which Eisler initially embraced. The best known result is the short song cycle Palmström, which, with its jumpy Sprechgesang, is closely related to Schoenberg's Perrault Lunaire. I have a program on Concertzender which is called An Ox on the Roof, Een Os op het Dak, after my book about contemporary music, and I played Palmström in my last program, so that was in September. You can listen, via the link. I find that a very beautiful piece, Palmström. Oh, I have to turn the page. And then we go from 12-tone music to agitprop. I don't know how to pronounce that in English. Agitprop, thank you. Eisler soon abandoned Schoenberg's atonal style when he moved to Berlin in 1925. He was open to influences from jazz and popular music and developed a Marxist vision of society. Brother Gerhard had become a communist journalist. Sister Elfriede, also known as Ruth Fischer, was co-founder of the Communist Party. Although Eisler supported the movement, he later declared never to have been an active member. Gradually, Eisler became somewhat estranged from his teacher, whose music he considered to be too remote from the common people. In turn, Schoenberg was horrified by the vulgar traits in the work of his former pupil. But Eisler was convinced music should be at the service of social change. Therefore, he joined the agitprop group, Das Rote Sprachrohr, the Red Announcer. Soon he began to compose marching songs and incendiary choral works, which were sung by left-wing trade unions throughout Europe. When Eisler met the singer Ernst Busch, who has been talked about already, in 1929, his career gained momentum. Busch brought his socially critical songs to the fore with a poignant intensity. There are still some on the internet, on YouTube. Bertolt Brecht. It was a matter of course that Eisler would one day cooperate with the left-wing radical playwright Bertolt Brecht. They got to know each other in 1930 and forged a lifelong friendship in which they worked together in many productions. Famous examples are the plays Die Maßnahme, kann man hier kaufen, habe ich gesehen, die Platte, and Die Mutter, and also the film Koele Wampe, which included the Solidarity song, which became an international hit. Together with Brecht, Eisler sharply denounced the hypocrisy of the ruling classes. The ordinary man is exploited and used as a pawn to satisfy their craving for power. A splendid example is Das Lied vom SA-Mann, an extremely fierce indictment of war. The text poignantly relates how, as a soldier, you are essentially shooting at your brother, who is a victim of the powers that be, just like you. After coming to power in 1933, the Nazis banned both the work of Eisler and Brecht for being entarted. Eisler wandered through Europe for some years and America before he finally settled in America in 1938. Brecht also initially stayed in Europe, where he lived in various Scandinavian countries before following Eisler to the United States in 1941. Reconciliation with Schoenberg. Eisler's name as a composer of socially critical pieces in a hybrid classical popular style had been firmly established by then. Gradually, he developed a synthesis between his former atonal music and his later style inspired by jazz and cabaret. He also began to use texts by other writers than Brecht. In 1937, he composed a Roman cantata on a text by the Italian anti-fascist poet Ignazio Silone, a fervent indictment of Mussolini's dictatorship. In 1938, Eisler became a lecturer at the New School for Social Research in New York. 2 years later, he received a grant from the Mexico University to investigate into the function of film music. He moved to Hollywood in 1942. There, he again met up with Bertolt Brecht, and in addition to several films, they made the plays Furcht und Elend des Dritten Reiches and Galileo. In Hollywood, Eisler, moreover, reconciled with Arnold Schoenberg, who he brought into contact with Charlie Chaplin and with Bertolt Brecht. And Brecht even wrote a birthday cantata for Schoenberg, which Eisler set to music. From entarted to un-American. Eisler thought he was safe from the Nazis in the land of the free, but he was deceived. In 1947, he had to appear before Senator McCarthy's notorious Committee on Un-American Activities. The latter accused him of cherishing communist sympathies and called his brother Gerhard a communist spy. Eisler reacted furiously, and these are quotes. "I am accused of being the brother of Gerhard Eisler, whom I love and admire and whom I will continue to defend. Does the committee believe that brotherly love is un-American? More importantly, the committee hopes that by persecuting me, it will be able to intimidate many other artists in America whom it may dislike for various unworthy reasons." Quote 2, "The committee hopes to hunt down every liberal, progressive, and socially aware artist in this country, and to subject their works to unconstitutional and hysterical political censorship. It's horrible to think what will become of American art if this commission is to judge what art is American and what is un-American. This is the sort of thing Hitler and Mussolini tried. They were not successful, and neither will the House Committee on American Activities be." Then the socialist utopia. Thanks to international protests, Eisler was not convicted, though he was expelled from the country. Via Vienna, he eventually settled in East Berlin, the capital of the brand new German Democratic Republic. Here, Eisler contributed with dedication to the construction of the socialist utopia, die Heilstadt. He was convinced he would serve the cause best by composing applied music for film, theater, television, cabaret, and public events. He even wrote the East German national anthem. Eisler may have been committed to the socialist cause very much, but even in the GDR, the German Democratic Republic, he clashed with the authorities. When he published his self-written libretto Faust in 1953, the apparatchiks accused him of harboring an anti-socialist, pro-American attitude. Eisler, however, was convinced, having just written a national opera in which the exploitation of the common people was denounced. The accusations are particularly harsh given his exile from the US and his voluntary return to the German Democratic Republic. And then the title is Kein Leben oder Angst, ohne Angst, aber dann das K steht dann between brackets. Also kein Leben, aber ein Leben ohne Angst. Ein Leben ohne Angst, kein Leben ohne Angst. Sein Leben war nicht ohne Angst. Nevertheless, Eisler remained loyal to East Germany. He even wrote a so-called Canossa letter, like Shostakovich did in the Soviet Union, in which he humbly pledged to comply with the wishes of the state. In 1962, he completed his last work, Ernste Gesänge, on texts by various poets. In this work, he seems to take stock of his life. The phrase Leben ohne Angst zu haben, living without fear, from the 6th song speaks volumes in this respect. Will that be sung tomorrow?
No,
yeah, it will be sung tomorrow.
Gedeeltes uit Ernste Gesänge.
Ja, aber dieses Lied, genau. Ein Leben ohne Angst zu haben. Huh? Okay, now, we'll see. He completed this song in 1962 and died shortly after. It was not until a year later that his Ernste Gesänge were premiered. And one of these will be performed probably here in the festival. Okay, and I think that's a worthy conclusion of the Eisler Days. That's my text on my blog. You can read it if you like. Okay, then I'll ask Kate. Okay, perhaps you can walk around that side. Okay, so was this all new to you, or did you think, oh, I knew everything already?
I'd already read your blog.
Ah, you already read my book. Good for you. Good,
yeah,
good.
Yeah.
You are a composer from England.
Yes.
You studied at Cambridge.
Yes.
And then you came to Amsterdam. Why? To the Amsterdam Conservatoire.
I was inspired by Louis Andriessen while I was at Cambridge, and I loved his tradition of politically engaged music, and I knew the Netherlands, say, and Amsterdam in particular, as having a culture of independent thought and political struggle and engaged arts, and so that's why I really thought I'd love to study at the Amsterdam Conservatory.
And you did not go to The Hague because that's where Louis Andriessen was a teacher.
No, I didn't. I went to open days at both Amsterdam and at The Hague, and I liked Amsterdam better, I think. Yeah.
So who did you study with in Amsterdam?
All of the teachers.
All
actually.
of them?
Yeah.
Wow. So that's Richard Ayres.
Richard Ayres, Willem Yates, Wim Hendricks, a few lessons with Jorrit Wenger as well, and also with Joel Bond.
Joel Bond, so 5 teachers.
Yeah.
And did it satisfy your expectations of what you wanted to learn?
Kind of. A lot of what I was wanting to explore while I was at the conservatorium was this intersection of composing new music and activism. Even when I was at Cambridge, I was getting very involved with the struggle to cut emissions and fight climate change, and also international justice regarding climate change. I was really getting quite involved with that, and I almost gave up music to join the Green Party and be elected, and then I decided at the last minute not to do that and go to Amsterdam and study music instead. But I found that I was really looking for people who'd gone before and tried to combine music and climate change activism, but I found Andriessen as an example, but he wasn't so much focused on climate change, so I had to kind of invent it myself a little bit. Yeah.
In Holland we do have Marlijn Twaalfhoven. I think he addresses the same topics. Do you work together with him now?
Yeah, we yesterday we collaborated making music for the Klimaatstaking, and so I'm the founder of a choir called the Beautiful Trouble Choir, and I sing in the Verzet per Couplet choir as well.
Verzet per couplet, dus resistance by what is a couplet? play
By
couplet
verses.
by verses. Yeah, but
Yeah.
a couplet is a
Yeah.
paragraph or something.
Yeah. So we were actually I was playing the trumpet in a piece by Una von Kale as well in the Klimaatstapje yesterday, and I've composed music for the 4 different ensembles to play on marches and demonstrations in particular.
And how many ensembles were there yesterday playing music?
So there was a bigger one, Musicians for Climate,
Mm-hmm.
and that was particularly brought together by Merlijn Twaalfhoven and Una.
Mm-hmm.
And there was also the Klimaatactiekoor, of which the Beautiful Trouble Choir, which I founded, they came and joined together in a big protest choir.
And how many were present at this climate strike?
I think about 30,000 were there in the
Wow.
yesterday. Yeah.
And did they all sing along?
Well, the choir, there was only a choir of about sort of 30 people or so, and so then there was thousands on the demonstration. So it was more, there were lots of different musical groups, and they were all interspersed in different areas. But the great thing was there was also some newly composed music. It wasn't just the same protest songs again and again. And that I found so inspiring. You don't have to keep doing the same Bella Ciao again and again and again. You can actually compose something new for the times.
Yeah.
And have it, and I take an example, inspiration from Eisler, in that he wrote really interesting protest music. That's why I really like the Solidariteit. It's not just chord 1, chord 4, chord 5, chord 1, again and again. He does interesting things with the harmony, and yet it's a very popular anthem, and
Yeah.
with text are relevant today, I think.
Perhaps we can play that. Solidaritätslied.
Yeah.
Vorwärts und nicht vergessen, worin unsere Stärke besteht. Beim Hungern und beim Essen. Vorwärts und nicht vergessen, die Solidarität. Auf wir Völker diese Erde, einigt euch in diesem Sinn, dass sie jetzt die eure Erde und die große Lehrerin. Vorwärts und nicht vergessen, worin unsere Stärke besteht. Beim Hungern und beim Essen. Vorwärts, nicht vergessen, die Solidarität. Schwarzer, weißer, brauner, gelber, Ende die Geschlechterein. Friede ist die Völker selber, wieder sich einig sein. Vorwärts und nicht vergessen, worin unsere Stärke besteht. Beim Hungern und beim Essen. Vorwärts, nicht vergessen, die Solidarität. Wollen wir es schnell erreichen, brauchen wir noch dich und dich. Wer im Stich lässt seinesgleichen, lässt ja nur sich selbst im Stich. Vorwärts und nicht vergessen, worin unsere Stärke besteht. Beim Hungern und beim Essen. Vorwärts, nicht vergessen, die Solidarität. Unsere Hände sie auch sein, sehen uns als Friedherr gern, denn solange sie uns entzweien, bleiben sie doch unsere Herren. Vorwärts und nicht vergessen, worin unsere Stärke besteht. Beim Hungern und beim Essen. Vorwärts, nicht vergessen, die Solidarität. Proletarier aller Länder, einigt euch und ihr seid frei. Eure großen Regimente brechen jede Tyrannei. Vorwärts und nie vergessen, und die Frage konkret gestellt. Beim Hungern und beim Essen. Wessen Morgen ist der Morgen, wessen Welt ist die Welt.
You said something about it not being as one expects. What was the...
Well, you can't even immediately tell what key it's in when you hear it. It's sort of in A, but then rather than going to E, it kind of goes to G minor. It kind of goes between those two, and it's got a rather asymmetrical verse and chorus structure as well, but it's still very singable by everyone, and I find that such a relief when there are so many boring protest songs, just to have something that's really got a bit of interest.
And
to
I
it.
think
Yeah.
you sang it yourself too?
Yeah, well, I've sang it with the Facette Percouplet choir, and
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed that. And I find the words, they're still, he talks about people of different races actually, uniting and fighting together. And I think solidarity is still a very important concept now.
And did you know about Eisler before you came to study here? Had you heard about him? Had you learned about him in Cambridge?
A little bit, yeah. So I studied a bit about film music at Cambridge, and I looked at the book that was written with Adorno, and he talks about Eisler quite a lot. But actually, a lot of his music I wasn't so aware of, and I actually quite recently started to listen to it. And I love the fact that he writes, more artistic music and also more politically engaged music. It's like he sort of has different hats that he puts on, but he still writes he's both sort of equally sincere, and his protest music is sort of equally beautiful, actually, I think, as some of his artistic music.
And when you studied in Amsterdam, was he more a core business composer, or was he also, not talked about very much?
He wasn't talked about so much. I kind of had to look into it a little bit myself. Yeah.
And you were interested already before you were invited to come here?
I only really knew the Solidaritätslied, but then I looked into it at Cambridge. It was more, the focus was on the Italian avant-garde, so composers like Luigi Nono. So we studied his politically engaged operas, like in the Bright Sunshine Heavy with Love we had a little look at, and Intolerance, and I loved those operas in particular. But I must say maybe they didn't communicate to the working class so well, I would say.
Yeah.
But Eisler, I think, communicated to the working class a lot better.
Yeah, because the people did sing it, and it's very singable. None of it is different. It's not so easy.
Exactly.
Although the people in the factories did enjoy it, I think they responded positively.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you both like his more activist songs and pieces, but also the autonomous music, of which we heard some today. How is that for you? Do you make a distinction when composing between activist things and autonomous music?
I'd much rather not do that. I feel you don't need to make that division in a way. If you're an activist, it's basically because you see what's happening in the world around you, and it triggers all these emotions in you. You hear about the Amazon burning, for example, and you get all these emotions. And so you need both music that's like, we're going to stand up, we're going to fight to stop this, and music that's like, this is terribly sad. And so it's like a lot of Eisler songs, they're about homesickness, they're about, they're quite mournful songs. And you need that as well, you need that, and you need the music that's get up and fight. So I don't think you need to make a distinction, really.
And do you really see it as your task to relate to topical themes, to society? And do you think you can change things for the better?
For a long time I was feeling that I was rather overwhelmed by issues to do with, the environment. It is very overwhelming, and I sort of thought that, I shouldn't be a musician, I should be a journalist, I should be a politician, this is so urgent, we can't change the world with music. And then a lot of my teachers at Cambridge, when I tried to write politically engaged music, they said, this music is rubbish, you can't put politics in music.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just write pure music. They told me that at Cambridge, and that was very dispiriting.
And so how did the teachers here respond in Holland?
Better. They really, like Joel Bonds in particular, really encouraged me. He actually he commissioned the Shell Symphony because he wanted to put on a concert of politically engaged music in the Muziekgebouw. Yeah,
he was the leader of the Nieuw Ensemble. For those who don't know Joel Bonds, he just recently won a prize, the Quailmeyer Award, with his own piece, Nomads. So he encouraged you, he even commissioned the Shell Symphony.
I mean, what happened was that he said, I had the idea to write the Shell Symphony anyway because there's been a long movement against basically the fossil fuel companies. They're getting increasingly unpopular because of climate change and the fact they're still almost 95% of their business is still in extracting oil and gas despite climate change. And what they've often done is they've sponsored, given tiny amounts to, for example, the British Museum, the South Bank Centre, the Van Gogh Museum, the Concertgebouw, as a way of saying, we're helping the arts, therefore just turn a blind eye to what we're doing with extracting all these fossil fuels.
And it's a fraction of what they don't pay in tax in Holland, probably.
I mean, it's literally about 0.5% or less of the Concertgebouw's budget is from Shell. And so I thought, I want to create a piece of music that's both a sort of protest piece and to actually be performed in a protest context. So, outside the Concertgebouw with placards, but also music that's like, what Shell is doing is very sad and nature is very beautiful, and try to express this through music.
Perhaps we can watch a fragment. It lasts 15 minutes in all, I think, and
Yeah.
we've got an excerpt of 6 fragments.
So what you're going to see is actually there was 2 performances. There was a performance of it outside the Concertgebouw, and it was also performed in the Muziekgebouw, but the directors of the Muziekgebouw didn't want it in the main hall.
Ah,
So that was why it was performed in the lobby, and actually the new ensemble didn't want to perform it either. So there was a lot of politics going on with them saying, we don't want to criticise the Concertgebouw.
well, the musicians from New Ensemble didn't want to play
They didn't
it.
want it because it was too political. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And they asked for a political piece?
Yeah.
Okay. So there goes your old bonds. Okay. This is the Shell Symphony in front of the Concertgebouw. But there was some of the bands to the... But anyway, yeah. Yeah, doe maar.
Is everyone tuned?
Yes!
Yes, brilliant. Okay. Thank you all for coming, everyone. I've written this piece, Shell Symphony, because I'm not happy with music being used to clean up the image of an oil company. The fossil fuel industry sponsors artistic institutions throughout the world. They're not doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. They're doing it so people forget about their business as usual. Business as usual for Shell is knowing about climate change for decades and decades, and still today 99% of their energy business is in fossil fuels. And it's a very small amount of money that Shell pays the Concertgebouw. The Concertgebouw has very little to lose by cutting its ties with this extremely unethical company.
I had to find all these musicians myself. It's half of all the percussion are the Amsterdam Rhythms of Resistance ensemble. So they are an explicitly activist music ensemble. They don't read music. They play on demonstrations. So they're a kind of drum band that play at demonstrations. And they were very up for anything like this. I asked a lot of classical musicians and they didn't want to take part. I think...
None of them?
Well, a lot of students wanted to take part from The Hague, and some people from the squatting movement did. I think now things are changing. I think now a lot more classical musicians are saying we're willing to risk our career to, you know, say, make a political statement. I think that's changing in the last few years. This was 2017, this piece.
Yeah, it's 2 years ago.
Yeah,
It's not so
yeah,
long ago.
yeah.
It's quite recent.
Yeah, but so it was half of it was Rhythms of Resistance, and the other half were saxophones, flute. There was someone playing a shell oil drum as a drum. There was
The yellow
Yeah,
one with
yeah.
the half red, half yellow. That
Yeah,
was an
yeah.
oil drum from Shell. Huh?
from Shell.
And
Yeah,
it was quite difficult to acquire, I think.
yeah. It was €60 on eBay.
60 euros for
It's quite a lot.
So you
yeah.
sponsored Shell with your Shell Symphony.
I didn't buy it from Shell. I bought it from some guy in Texas.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the idea was to have 3 movements, and the outer movements were sort of more, say, activist music, and the inner music was more sort of art music. So movement 2 is the kind of mournful piece describing a poisoned river.
Yeah.
And the movements 1 and movement 3 are the kind of pieces to say, there's a concert, it's a protest, come along, to all the people on Museum Prime.
Yeah, let's listen to part 2 groups of musicians together, the ones reading music and the others not reading music?
Oh, good question. I prepared a very complicated score, basically. So the rhythms of resistance, they are conducted by someone with a whistle. And
That's
so
you.
that was me. And so
Ah.
what you do on the whistle shows what rhythm they play, basically. And they conduct in a different way so rather than kind of, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 1, 2, 3. It's a totally different way of conducting, and this is one rhythm, this is another rhythm. And so I sort of conducted them, and then gave the people who read music, I made a conventional score for them. So it's kind of 2 different scores and doing it at the same time.
And
Yeah.
how long did it take you to rehearse all this?
It was 2 or 3 rehearsals, I think.
Only so few.
Yeah, so not many rehearsals. It was, it's, I had to write quite pretty simple music because it was a mixture of professional musicians and amateur musicians. And this I thought was very important, actually bringing these different groups of people together.
And did you invite the people from the Concertgebouw to come
I did,
listen?
and they did, yeah.
They came?
Yeah.
Okay. Simon Renk, the director?
I think so.
I
I mean,
didn't see him in the
there were
audience.
two women who came out.
Okay.
There was
While you were playing?
they came out and said hello to me at the beginning of the. Said, hello, we're from the Concertgebouw, we're here to listen.
Okay.
And then her name was Carmen Block or something, and she responded to Guido van Oorschot in the Volkskrant and said, we admire Kate Honey's idealism, but we're not going to drop shell.
Yes, I read that. It's in an article in our Volkskrant paper.
Yeah.
She responded, it's little money, but we are not going to drop it. So have you been in contact with her afterwards? Why don't you do that?
We've carried on, we've done many more performances. One outside the revolving doors into the Concertgebouw, and the other actually inside the Concertgebouw.
Oh wow. And you were chucked out or no?
No. It wasn't actually in the Great Hall, it was in that kind of foyer place. So I formed there are now 2 different groups that are doing performances inside the Concertgebouw to try and get them to drop shell. There's Shell Out Sounds, which I founded, and there's Fossil Free Culture, who recently did another performance inside the Concertgebouw. And they're both trying to say to the Concertgebouw, say how much money Shell actually gives you if it's so small, and stop giving this social license to fossil fuel companies, saying they can carry on doing what they're doing because they give money to the arts. That's not a responsible thing to do.
And have you had any success already with your activist music, that somebody or a company changed their attitude or changed their rulings?
Yes, the Van Gogh Museum dropped shell.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, so I was part of a performance, actually Fossil Free Culture organised this performance, and it was inside the Van Gogh Museum on the steps leading down, and it was 8 of us dressed in white dresses and had shells full of sort of treacle, and we pretended to sort of drink this treacle, which is meant to be oil, and be poisoned by it. And I sort of read out a letter by Vincent van Gogh saying that that he was an idealistic artist, basically. And then the police came and arrested us all.
Yes, and you were in prison for
Yeah.
36 hours, I think.
Yeah.
So then we come back to Eisler, because he fled from Germany, being called Entarten. Then he had to flee. Well, he was chucked out of America for being un-American, and then in the German Democratic Republic he again was accused. How do you see your relation to society? Because we always say Holland is very, very, very tolerant, it's very free. So how do you see that?
What I love about Eisler is that he really lived up to his ideals, and he sort of suffered for his ideals as well. And he refused to say, art is here and life is here. Art and life, they come together. And that meant he had to flee a country twice because of his ideals. And I think in Holland it is a very tolerant country, but at the same time, you see Toronto in Canada yesterday, and there were 500,000 people on the streets calling for climate justice. In The Hague it was about 30,000. So
But still, Canada has more inhabitants, probably?
Probably more, but still there's not a kind of sense of being on the streets and protesting so much here. I think in maybe Brussels, for example, there's more of this kind of this sense of solidarity and we're on the street together kind of thing. I think there's less of that.
And what's it like in England?
In England, England's been hit very hard by austerity, and so there's a lot of popular anger at the moment. Some of it's been directed, has actually unfortunately fueled the Brexit thing, where people wanted to fight against David Cameron, who was seen to be supporting the membership of the European Union. But a lot of this anger about austerity has politicised a lot of the younger generation in England. So actually there's quite a political culture there at the moment.
Yeah, and also about climate change too.
Yeah.
And when you write music, you said this, you had to keep it simple because not all of them will verse in music. When you write music, what listener do you have in mind? Generally, or?
Good question. Sometimes I just write music purely for myself, and if that's something that I find beautiful, that's the only thing I could write, kind of thing. It used to be I was writing maybe more complex music, so I've written various pieces about Hambach Forest in Germany, and that is a forest that's 12,000 years old, and RWE Energy, they're a coal mine company, they want to destroy this forest to build a coal mine.
Yeah, RWE, I think they're even in Holland. I think
Yeah.
they took over some companies here, or tried to.
Yeah, but it's so I went to visit Hambach Forest, and I've written various pieces of music about it, and I wrote a piece that was again performed in the Musikgebouw for the new ensemble, who performed it this time.
They did?
Yeah, yeah, and it was more of a sort of...
Is that Hamdi Lives?
No, that's Anthropocene.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that was more sort of in the contemporary classical music sort of mould. And with sort of lots of alternative tunings, for example. I really enjoyed it as a piece of music myself. But I think a lot of the activists were a bit confused by it in the forest. And so I went back to Hambach Forest again, and I wrote a piece of music that was more with simpler harmonies and more in the structure of a pop song.
Is that
That's Hamdi Bleibt.
That's Hamdi Bleibt.
Yeah,
Hamdi Bleibt. It's on her SoundCloud account, so you can listen to it. I have another song by you, which is called About the Trees. Isn't that also inspired by the Hambach Forest?
So what happened was that RWE tried to evict, there's a whole treehouse village in Hambach Forest, and the treehouse village means that RWE can't cut the trees down. And what happened is that they came into the forest with a lot of machines and sort of cherry picker machines, and they tried to take the tree houses down out of the trees. And when they did that, an activist fell out of his treehouse and died.
Oh yeah.
And so I wrote this sort of choral piece in memory of this activist, whose name was Stefan Mein.
Yeah.
And that is We Need Trees.
We Need Trees. Misschien kunnen we dat ook even horen, een stukje. We Need Trees.
That's the long version, there's a short version as well.
Yeah. So what are they actually singing?
We need trees for air to breathe, keep the air, spare the trees.
Exactly, and that they sing along, the people living in the...
Yeah, so it's a sort of chant, basically, which was performed at the funeral of this activist.
And is it, you said you wrote another piece which daunted them, that was too...
Complicated.
Yeah, too complicated.
Yeah.
So, is there a gap? Because you are an activist, but still there seems to be a gap with the people you want to reach.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that?
I don't know yet. I'm always going to keep writing music for myself because I think that's quite a therapeutic thing, and I need to write music that I personally find beautiful. I can still find music with simpler harmony, for example, beautiful. I just wouldn't want to live on that alone. I wouldn't want to do that by itself. So the last movement of the Shell Symphony, for example, I still find that very beautiful, even though it's quite simple and repetitive. And Hamdi Bleibt, this sort of more pop song type piece I wrote for the activists, I still find that beautiful, and I love the fact that the activists themselves really enjoyed it. I guess it's just writing lots of different kinds of pieces.
Yeah, but you have to sort of split up into personalities, the composer for the simple, understandable songs or music and the autonomous music, or...
Yes and no. I mean, you can probably still tell both pieces are by me, and what I want to do is kind of make that gap smaller and smaller kind of thing. and also really invent new contexts for music performance. So actually, a lot of activists, for example, they sit on blockades quite a lot. So, you know, in Groningen recently, there was a blockade where a fracking site was shut down by several thousand activists.
A fracking site? Do you have fracking sites? I didn't know.
Yeah, fracking sites in Groningen, which are causing earthquakes. So,
I thought fracking was not when they press the earth to get out the remaining drops of oil.
Yeah, there's an aardgas winning that's happening in Groningen at the moment.
They do that too?
Yes.
I thought they were only collecting gas.
Yeah. I think it's it's fracking because it's causing earthquakes and it's polluting the groundwater.
Okay. And so, well, I have to continue with Tom Löwenthal, I think.
Yeah.
So, what is your next plan? What are you working on now?
What I'm doing now is I'm travelling to Białowieża forest in Poland.
Oh, that one, yeah.
It's Europe's last wilderness to write a piece for piano duet and electronics inspired by this forest, which is going to be performed in Splendor next
Splendor
month.
here in Amsterdam.
Yeah, by a piano duo at the Conservatorium of Amsterdam.
So will you collect sounds there in the forest,
Yes.
and you will use them in the electronic?
So that's my autonomous music project, and my activist music project is I've started a choir called the Beautiful Trouble Choir, and I'm going to be composing new pieces of political choral music for them.
Okay.
They will perform on blockades and protests and that kind of thing.
When can we hear the next performance?
Come to the Concertgebouw lots and you might see them.
Okay.
Probably not in the hall, but maybe in the foyer or the box office. And
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And good luck with all your endeavors. Here's a surprise guest.
Ja.
So, wat doen we? Spreken we Nederlands?
Ja,
Dan
Nederlands of een beetje Duits.
Een beetje,
Maar
wie
Engels
vielleicht
ist-
können wir es auch
English
auf
is not
Deutsch.
my
Ja.
cup of tea.
Die Nelly hat mir erzählt, du hast in Wann sehr viel Musik von Eisler gespielt. Also,
Ah ja.
ja, je mag ook in het Nederlands.
Ja. Ik ben eigenlijk van huis uit, hoe heet het, kom ik uit de katholieke kerk. Heb ik daar mijn muzikale eerste wortels. En toen kwam ik ook al in de, ik ben natuurlijk wel een oudere generatie dan zij. In de halverwege 70e jaren vaak ook naar de rondomconcerten van Reiner de Leeuw in de kleine zaal. Maar ook, toen was ik net 16, 17, dus hoorde ik op de school ook, hadden we zo Duits en dan hadden we zo met audiovisueel, was dat net nieuw. En dan hoorde ik de Dreigroschen als eerste. Wat is dat voor muziek?
Van Kurt Weill.
Kurt Weill, ja. Wat een bijzondere muziek. Het was meteen eigenlijk... en ook met name bijvoorbeeld later een concert is, ik moet in ongeveer 76, 77 geweest zijn. Met het Nederlands Blaasensemble, met Werner Herbers.
Ja, die hier in de zaal zit, Homo West.
En die speelde dus ook zo die suite van de Dreigroschen, maar ook Eisler. En ja, mijn hart was helemaal warm, ik was helemaal wild daarvan, van die muziek. Dus dat is toen eigenlijk als het eerste zo begonnen. En toen ben ik later als dienstweigeraar bij CREA terechtgekomen, de culturele organisatie van de universiteit. We zaten hier ook af en toe, hè, Pieter? We kwamen ook hier in de universiteitstheater, maar CREA, dat is daar, was op de binnengasthuis.
Ja, CREA was de creatieve cultural site of the University of Amsterdam, and it was here quite close. And Wilhelmina Gast, hoe heet het ook weer? Niet Binnengasthuis.
Ja, precies. Daar was ik stafdocent van de muziekafdeling en daar deed ik allemaal dingen. En op een gegeven moment gingen we projecten doen. Eerst in samenwerking met de Schouwburg, toen deden we het toneelstuk Mephisto van Klaus Mann. En toen gingen wij een voorprogramma maken. Dat hebben we met al die acteurs, met Erik Schneider, Johan, Gees Linnenbank, noem ze allemaal bekende acteurs, hebben we laten zingen. En dat zijn allemaal Eisler-liederen geweest eigenlijk, of Eisler-weilen en zo. Maar vooral dus toneelmuziek. En dat was een hele bijzondere ervaring ook. Toen heb ik al die liederen leren kennen, samen met mijn goede vriend, regisseur die net ook vanochtend genoemd is. Johnny Kuiper, een grote inspirator is die geweest, die is daarmee begonnen. Toen hebben wij, een jaar later, een heel programma gemaakt over 20e eeuwse toneelmuziek, met name Eisler-Weill. Daar kwam het op neer, hier en daar ook wel wat Nederlands, maar het was eigenlijk Eisler Wild-programma. En heb ik dus dat hele repertoire, vooral het vocale, dus leren kennen. Ik was vanochtend verrast hoe goed die strijkers die instrumentale muziek, die opleiding die Eisler natuurlijk heeft gehad van Schoenberg, zo'n geweldige klassieke opleiding.
Dat hoor je meteen, hè? Ja.
Ook later dat hij dan ook op de atonale schrijft. Maar daar heb ik me nooit zo mee bezig gehouden, met die tak, maar meer echt met het vocale en met het strijdlustige eigenlijk. Hoe heet het? Toen hebben wij dat programma gedaan met Erik Schneider, dat is een bekend acteur. Ik weet niet, hij leeft nog wel, hij is toch wel wat ouder nu, hè, Erik Schneider.
Leeft hij nog? Ja?
Die kon fantastisch zingen en die heeft dat allemaal. En je moet dat vaak eigenlijk, dat soort muziek, beter met acteurs dan met klassieke zangers die daar ineens zo gaan zingen. Dan wordt het kunst.
Ja.
En dan ben je verkocht en dan komt het niet meer aan. Je moet het met kracht en met grote inhoud, zo moet het neergezet worden. Dus dan ben je beter af met acteurs die zingen. En die af en toe dan daarnaast even dingen, dan met die kunstenmakers. Het jaar daarna hebben wij toen in Odeon gespeeld. Ik had een koor, een groot koor. En hebben wij toen een paar delen uit de Maasnamen gespeeld. Die hadden wij toen, wij waren naar Berlijn gegaan en we zijn toen dat was dan allemaal nog, moest je langs de Checkpoint Charlie en gingen we naar de Academie der Kunsten, hebben wij vrouw Rienecker, die was toen met Manfred Graafs was net gestorven, die had echt zo'n beetje de Bijbel gemaakt van Eisler, dus daar het hele repertoire staat daarin, daar kun je alles lezen. Maar die was net overleden, toen hebben wij kennis gemaakt met vrouw Rienecker en die heeft ons toen zo onder de toonbank een paar delen uit de Maasnamen toegestopt, ja. En die hebben wij toen gespeeld en dat hakt er zo in dat niemand zal dat weten van ons. Ja, we kunnen het op het cd'tje die daar ligt, maar het is zoiets als de Sacre du Printemps van Eisler. Onvoorstelbare kracht zat daarin, zo'n gigantische emotie over het onrecht in de wereld. Daar gaat het over eigenlijk. En Brecht heeft het natuurlijk zelf teruggetrokken, want het is eigenlijk op het randje, over het randje, alsof ze geradicaliseerd waren. Daarmee heeft het nooit tot klinken. Maar we moeten het maar gauw gaan doen.
Ja, daar is de Eisler-stichting voor.
Ja, dan moeten we echt doen, want je weet niet wat je hoort. Ik denk dat niemand, Pieter, jij wel, jij was daarbij natuurlijk. Dat was een ervaring dat ging door merg en been. Dus we zijn gek dat we dat niet nog een keer. Maar ja, inhoudelijk moet het natuurlijk wel goed begeleid worden, denk ik.
Heb jij een verklaring voor dat Eisler inderdaad in Nederland zo goed als vergeten is?
Nou ja, weet je, als we 10 jaar geleden dit zouden doen, dan was er wel wat meer. Maar ik weet het niet, mensen met andere dingen bezig. Maar het is ontzettend stom, want Eisler is, dat is zo emotioneel ook, zo krachtig en zo'n roep om rechtvaardigheid. Ik was in 2012 bij de Eisler-taak in Berlijn en er waren er allemaal lezingen en zo, allemaal theoretische en zo. Eigenlijk was de enige die zei van, ja maar Eisler is een politieke componist en het gaat om het gevoel. En dat was Nelly Koetsier, die hield daar een lezing. Zij deed dat hartstikke goed toen. Dus bravo, absoluut. Ja. Maar dat wordt vaak vergeten.
Maar dat is toch zoals wij hem kennen, dat is toch het eerste waar je aan denkt bij Eisler, politiek?
Veel theorie allemaal, maar het gaat gewoon om
ja, het hart. Ja.
Dat gaat het om. En om rechtvaardigheid.
Ja, precies.
Nou ja, door al die invloeden die ik toen in die 80 jaar heb gehad, heb ik samen met Huub Oosterhuis, de vader van Treintje.
Huub Oosterhuis, for those who don't know, he was a composer who wrote a lot of church music.
Ja, is een poem, een dichter.
Ja.
En wij maken dus kerkmuziek, maar het is echt ook politiek geëngageerd. Ja. Het is echt wel, ik weet niet dat, het is echt wel zeer politiek. Hebben wij daar een stuk geschreven, ook over het milieu, in 1989, het lied van de aarde. En dat is op de televisie een paar keer geweest. We hebben het uitgevoerd in de Doelen in Amsterdam, onlangs in de Philipszaal in Eindhoven. Het is in Duitsland ook, in Osnabrück en in Koblenz gespeeld, in Antwerpen, overal. We moeten het maar gauw weer doen. Maar dat is een stuk wat daar eigenlijk vol van Eisler invloeden zit. Maar ik kan het je niet laten horen, ik heb het niet bij de hand. Ja.
Nee, dat is jammer. Maar als je dan net het verhaal hebt gehoord van Kate, dat vond ik wel schokkend hoor, dat nieuw ensemble dan het stuk weigert te spelen. Wat vind jij ervan?
Ja, geld regeert hè?
Ja.
In de wereld, dus dat is zo simpel is het.
Ja, maar dat is, ik bedoel, dat vond ik tamelijk schokkend. Dus hoe zie jij dat nu? Jij zegt nu, je hebt het nu onlangs weer gespeeld. Is er nu, wat Kate eigenlijk ook zei, meer bereidheid om dit soort thema's aan te kaarten door muzici en kunstenaars?
Vast, maar dat moet van de jongere generatie komen, denk ik. Inderdaad, als je het hebt over klimaat nu.
Mm-hmm.
Ja.
Ja, nee,
Het
maar
is ook niet alleen klimaat. Hè?
nee, het zijn meer dingen, maar wat doe jij zelf behalve dat lied van de aarde? Ben jij een activistische componist? Doe jij...
Nou, een beetje eigenlijk. Niet heel... ja, ik schrijf op het ogenblik een opera over de bevrijding van Den Bosch, dus een beetje historische thema's.
In de 80-jarige oorlog?
Dat is het plan, maar toen is dit, die van 75 jaar geleden, is eigenlijk eerst geworden, dat komt later. Dus dat is op het ogenblik nu allemaal. Het zuiden van Nederland. Ja, het zuiden van Nederland is in 44 en dat gaat in oktober in de parade in Den Bosch, dus komt alle. Maar dat zit ook vol met politiek en met allemaal verhalen die er gebeurd zijn. Zeer indrukwekkend is het denk ik.
En muzikaal, laatste vraag, want het is bijna tijd. Laat jij, want je bent erg bevlogen over Eisler.
Ja.
Als jij componeert, heb je dan ook zijn muziek in
Altijd.
gedachten? Ja?
Altijd. Ja.
Mhm.
Ja.
En klinkt het ook naar een Eisler dan?
Dat moet hij zijn.
Ja, het klinkt ook naar
Vaak wel.
Vaak wel, oké.
Ja, het is geen plagiaat, maar het is wat je meekrijgt gewoon en waar je niet aan ontkomt.
Ja, en dan net als jij, de luisteraar voor wie je schrijft, heb je dan ook iemand speciaal in gedachten? Terwijl je componeert?
Voor wie? Voor wie
Ja,
ik schrijf?
ja, heb je een luisteraar in gedachten?
Nou, ik schrijf niet complexe muziek, denk ik. Ik schrijf toch gewoon, denk ik, dat het verstaanbaar is voor iedereen. Ja.
Ja.
Dus,
zoals Eisler ook deed.
Ja.
Oké.
Ja.
Nou, dankjewel.
Dankjewel.
En u ook bedankt.
Kate, Thea und Tom, herzlichen Dank für die Einblicke in den Zusammenhang zwischen Musik, Komponieren und Aktivismus. Thank you very much for your reports on activism and composing. Very impressive. Voor mensen die meer willen horen en lezen over moderne muziek in mensentaal, heeft Thea het boek geschreven Os op het dak. Voor gewone mensen te begrijpen, zoals je zei.
Ja, in gewone mensentaal. Op verzoek van bezoekers van mijn cursus in het muziekgebouw en in het concertgebouw. En die zeiden altijd, god Thea, leuk wat je allemaal vertelt, maar is er niet een boek waar we het kunnen naslaan? En dan zei ik, ja, dan heb je dit boek en dat boek. En dan zei ze, ja, maar dat is zo dik of het is zo muzikologisch. En toen zei ik, nou, ik heb nu een dun boekje geschreven voor wat iedereen kan begrijpen. En Eisler staat er trouwens in met een ets van Nienke Dekker, die straks, even kijken welke pagina dat is. Dus zij is multitalent. Even kijken, Eisler, waar staat hij?
Toch dikker dan je dacht, hè, dat boek?
Ja, nou, pagina 38 en 49. Dus op 1 moet hij staan. Nee, dan moet het 49 zijn. Even kijken. Oh, hé, waar is die foto dan? Nou ja, je kunt er straks...
Zelf kopen, zelf de foto zoeken, komt het onderop.
Eén ding zeggen nog.
Ja?
Ik was het vergeten. Over de maasnamen. Midden in ons publiek zit iemand, Peter Schweinhardt.
Oh.
Die zit daar, die komt uit Berlijn.
Oké.
Die schrijft op het ogenblik de eerste versie van de maasnaam. Heeft hij helemaal, want er zijn er 2. Is hij helemaal mee bezig geweest. We zijn bij hem vorig jaar op zoek geweest.
Geredigeerd of wat?
Ja, ik kan dat besser vielleicht selber erzählen. Das ist sehr besonders, was Peter macht. Also die Maßnahme wird jetzt neu restauriert eigentlich.
Ah,
Ja.
okay.
Ja, und das wollte ich eben
Ja,
sagen.
goed, oké. Tolle.
Gut.
Oké, nou.
Ja, und damit endet unser Morgenprogramm. Ich hoffe, Sie alle wiederzusehen um 1:30 heute Nachmittag für den zweiten Teil der Eisler-Tage. Bis dann. Tschüss.